the doctor I see down here at UT Southwest had said that there was a new class of drugs out there in clinical trial for HSP90, that's what they called it. But he said probably really the best thing at the time, he says LDK-378 is a medicine that's in phase 1 trials that's also showing real promising results. And when we talked to the doctors at MD Anderson there, we went back in January and had the biopsies done. We were talking to the doctors, and all of them agreed that LDK-378 was the medicine that I should be on. Problem was all the phase 1 trials had closed. And they didn't know where I could go to get the medicine. They couldn't find any place that had the medicine available. And we said, well, what about HSP90? We know there's a clinic in Fayetteville that has a trial going on these HSP90 drugs. And the doctor said, well, would you rather do that, or we could possibly arrange something? You could go to Massachusetts General. They have a real, fine, and that was cancer research facility there. And that's actually the place that identified it first. He says, Dr. Haymack says there may be something going on at UCLA. We're like, well, we really don't want to be dependent on American Airlines in the wintertime. We said, what about this HSP90 trial in Fayetteville? He said, well, okay, if that's what you want to do, I'll make that call. And he called, he stepped out of the room and called the clinic up there and said, well, doctor wasn't in, but I left her a voicemail and gave her your contact information. So I got sick again while we were down there, was in the hospital, and the doctor that was on care that weekend is the doctor, he's over all the drug studies for the thoracic unit at MD Anderson. And so we were talking to him, and he says, yeah, he recommended the LDK-378 also. And we said, well, we can't find it, so Dr. Curry said maybe this HSP90 thing. He said, well, that might be possible as well. He says, and then we're going to have a trial opening up probably here in another month or so. And it's like, well, we're not waiting on that. And so once I was dismissed from the hospital, we came. We're driving home on Monday. We stopped to get a bite to eat, and while we were eating lunch, my phone rang. I answered it, and it was the research nurse from Fayetteville. She says, I'm just calling to make contact with you. I know we don't have the results of your pathology report back, but if it comes back as positive, call me, and we'll start the process of getting you enrolled in our clinical trial. And I said, is this for the HSP90? And she says, no, it's for LDK-378. We just opened this trial 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And they had just closed the HSP90.
HSP90. And we didn't know they'd closed it. So Tuesday, when the doctor's office called and said it was positive, I called her. Said, okay, let's get the ball rolling. And within about 2 hours, they called me back and said, be here next Tuesday. So that following Tuesday, we went to Fayetteville and checked in, and we did all my scans, and they called me a few days later and said, okay, you're in the trial. Be back up here on, I guess it was the following Thursday. So in 3 weeks' time, I went from not knowing where to go till the trial was open, and on that Thursday morning, I became the first person in phase trial 2, or stage 2 phase trial in the United States to take the medicine. So God really opened up that door. We don't know where it's going, but here just a couple weeks ago, I had my 8-week scans, and the medicine's working. All the cancer activity is significantly reduced. There's only one spot still lighting up in the CT scans, but it's he showed us, he compared them, it's much smaller. And also the reason I was back in the hospital is because there's a lot of fluid around my right lung, and the doctor down here at UT Southwest was really thinking I needed to have some kind of procedure to have the lung drained. The doctor in Fayetteville was kind of, let's wait, let's see what happens with it. And on the CT scan, he said this, he showed it to us on that the fluid in my lung is also beginning to decrease. He said, so he said, we're just going to wait. He said, I still advocate doing nothing. Let's watch and see what happens. So everything was good. So it's miracle number 2.
That's great. Well, it's really interesting to hear how the hand of God is just kind of throughout the entire process. You're an engineer, and I can tell when you describe this. One of the things I'm interested in is, how did you feel, and how did Delane feel that when you first, the realization that you had cancer set in? And when you felt that way, did someone say anything that was especially meaningful to you, or what would you tell us to say to someone who just discovered that?
I mean, since, I knew before the biopsy results or anything came back, I pretty much knew that I had cancer. So it was just kind of, when the doctor told me, I wasn't really shocked. I was obviously upset. It was pretty devastating news to be told, when you see the stats on lung cancer, that it's, to think that your lifespan suddenly went from 85 to 55. Not good, but how you approach people that are told you have cancer is, well, I'll give you an example of, there was a guy at work who I knew him when we worked in Midland together, so I've known the guy for 20 years, and he would, every once in a while, before I got sick, he'd stick his head in my office and say hey or whatever. Well, after he found out I had cancer, he hadn't come by in several weeks, and he made the comment to a coworker that he said, I really want to go and talk to Chris, but I don't know what to say to him. And the coworker said that, and I said, tell him to come in and talk to me. I'm still Chris. We don't have to talk about cancer. And I said, but if it comes up, it comes up. We'll talk about it, and it's okay. So that's kind of my my advice. What I tell people is like, if somebody is diagnosed with that, don't ignore them. Still go talk to them, and if they want to talk about it, they'll talk about it. Just be a shoulder to lean on is really what it comes down to. And there were other people came by and said, wow, we just heard you had this, what's going on and stuff. And I don't know if I told you, one young guy, he's a good Christian guy. His only fault was he graduated from OU, but he's a good guy. And he came in, he says, wow, he says, you seem kind of calm. He says, if it was me, I'd be really upset. And I said, well, I am upset, and believe me, I could go home and probably break every dish in the kitchen. I said, but then I'd end up with broken dishes and cancer, so I'm just going to deal with the cancer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so you're a pretty clinical guy here, and that's
that's great. It's like you said. It's like I guess my inner engineer kicked in. It's like I'm at point A. I want to be at point B. How do I get there? What's the shortest way to get there? And,
The other night you shared something that was really meaningful to me when we talked about experiencing God and how God can be our so many things in our life. And you selected the one refuge and strength. And you used Psalm 71, 1 through 8. So I went back in my devotions and was looking at that, and it's a really powerful section of scripture there. It would be great to hear you describe that again.
Again, well, what happened was, while I was going through radiation, I just didn't feel like my prayers were much less getting past the ceiling, And I just really didn't know how to pray. And I remember it may have been, some people said they've heard Steve Farrar say it. And other people said, well, they've heard Dr. Jeremiah say it, that if you don't know what to pray, just pray the Psalms.
Yeah.
So that's what I started doing, was every morning I'd read 10 Psalms, underline the passages that really meant something to me. Then I would go back and I'd say, okay, God, here's my prayer, and I would read those. And Psalm 71, which is one Danny was talking about.
And it's titled as the prayer of an old man for deliverance.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize.
And in you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be ashamed. In your righteousness, deliver me and rescue me. Incline your ear to me and save me. Be to me a rock of habitation to which I may continually come. You have given commandment to save me, for you are my rock and my fortress. And I just, just constantly just had to keep, remembering that God was in control of this. I could go to Him about any of it and, let Him take care of it. And, I said, things just would happen through here, through the whole course that, I knew God was doing something. It wasn't being wasted. And I said, my brain tumor was only 3 millimeters. And here about 6 months ago, I was sitting in one of the waiting rooms down here. And those cancer patients, we compare notes. It's kind of like, have you ever seen the commercial where the two old guys are comparing their surgery? They went up through my nose. That's what it's like. And I was just talking to this guy across the hall. We were both waiting on CT scans, and he was describing his cancer and the treatment stuff he'd gone through. He goes, yeah, he says, I had a 2 millimeter brain tumor, and they weren't sure they could treat it. They said, they told me the smallest brain tumor they'd ever treated with gamma knife was 3 millimeters. And I went, hi! So, they are learning, there's lots of stuff, I feel like, and I'm willing to be the first person to try things, because a lot of times there aren't any other options. Things like that just confirm that, God's not going to let this go to waste. He's going to use it, for good. And my doctor down there at MD Anderson, we asked him originally about ALK. And his response was, we don't test for it here. Well, we didn't know enough to ask, is there some other place for it to be tested for? But since he found out that I was out positive, he told us one day, he says, I test all my patients now.
Wow.
Wow, interesting.
So, again, a guy that's an expert in the field learned something new.
Yeah.
And,
How did the boys respond, and how's that changed your relationship with them?
the boys, well,
He
It
shaved
was-
his head.
yeah, they shaved my head. They had a big kick out of that. But, they really, I don't know, haven't said much, but you see it in their actions. And when I was in the hospital down there, there in mid-October, they came down to Houston to race bicycles at the track. And they really hadn't said much of anything at that point, but Delaney had gone back to the hotel, and
This was in 2010.
yeah, this was in 2010, before we knew I had ALK, but I had made the mistake of letting the emergency room nurse put the IV in my right arm, here by my elbow. And I am so right-handed, it's ridiculous. And I couldn't move my right arm without setting off the alarms on the IV. And Delaney had gone back to the hotel. I'd ordered a hamburger for lunch and came up, and I was trying to fix the hamburger without using my right arm. And my left hand is just, if I put a glove on it, it'll catch a baseball, but that's pretty much the extent of its usefulness. And I was just getting frustrated, and Shane got up and said, do you need some help? And I said, yeah, I'd appreciate some help. And he and Chad started fixing my hamburger. And that's when I realized, this is not good. My kids are helping me fix my lunch, and I broke down in front of them. And I think that's the first time they really realized, too, that, this was a lot worse than what any of us had thought it was.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting to watch him, because, the last, it's when it was in between before Chad moved to Colorado. He called, he had gone out riding his bike, and he called and he says, you feel good enough, you think you can go ride your bike? And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, well, I'm going to have 90 miles in by the time I get back to the house. I'd like to do 100. You think you can ride with me Friday? I said, okay. And so I got dressed, and we headed out on a bike ride. And before I got sick, it was really kind of funny. Whenever we'd get into a big headwind, I'd look up and I would have two people trailing along behind me, using me to block the wind. But on this ride, I noticed Chad was in front. Trying, and he would, every once in a while, he'd go, okay, over here. He'd point, he says, you right over here, I'll keep you out of the wind. and that's how we rode. And we rode 10 miles together. And when we went back to MD Anderson that week, and the doctor said, well, how you been feeling? I said, oh, I've been feeling pretty good. I went and rode my bike 10 miles. And he said, you're not our normal cancer patient. I'm like, okay, that's good. As long as I'm not normal, we're good. So, and Shane is, I don't know, Shane's changed probably more, or I see it more in Shane than I do in Chad. That he is, I don't know how to put it.
He's in the Word.
He's studying his Bible a lot more. And he too also tends to be probably a little bit more protective of me and stuff when he's around. And I've had to tell him a couple of times since I had, you know, the broken vertebrae and stuff, because he'll give me a hug and I was like, okay, not too hard. You know, he's like that. But they, you know, seem to be handling it, but we don't know. You know, it's kind of, it's hard to tell because neither of them say a lot about it.
Yeah.
But they're living life and they get here when they can.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, yeah. And I told, I don't know if I wrote about it on my blog, but Chad, when he was about to graduate, just after I'd been diagnosed, he called me, and it was when some of the bigger bike teams were starting to notice him, and in the collegiate races and some of the other races, and were starting to contact him. And he called me, and we were chatting on the phone, and I could tell he wanted some advice from me, but he didn't quite know how to ask me for the advice or something. But he was basically asking me, you know, how did I feel about him deciding, you know, maybe go race a bike instead of, you know, using his engineering degree that I would just paid a lot of money for. But over that night, you know, it just kind of bothered me that I really, you know, I knew he wanted to ask but couldn't, and he didn't know how to ask, and I didn't volunteer. And the next day I called him back and I said, well, I think you need to, you know, pursue your dream. I said, don't know how long it's going to take. We're not going to let you starve, but, you know, go for it. I said, I don't want you to turn, you know, to suddenly, you know, one day be 50 and be thinking about what could have, you know, had I pursued it, what would have happened. And so that's, you know, where he went. And we pretty much told Shane, you can't tell Shane, no, you got to go, you know, go to work now. So both of them are, you know, pursuing the dream. Or, you know,
That's great.
So you know, I'm thrilled that he's doing it. That gives me more joy than anything than knowing that he's pursuing that dream now. But I was sharing with the Cancer Encouragement Group that night. Do you remember what psalm it was, Delaney?
Was it 81?
Was it anyone? That this is one of my, when I was going through the radiation treatments and stuff, if you've ever been around MRI machines, or, you know, as you walk through the halls of MD Anderson, you can just hear them thumping and whining away. And they're very loud when you're in them. But one of the, you know, Psalm 81, one morning I was reading, it says, you called in trouble and I rescued you. I answered you in the hiding place of thunder. And every time they put me on one of those machines, I think about that now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. Other questions you guys have?
You know, anybody can ask anything.
I know you're still learning, but what, at this point, what do you feel like's been the biggest lesson or the biggest challenge? Or what viewpoint of God has changed the most for you through this process?
One thing that, you know, I think that has struck me, and I was mentioning the nurse, and there's been several other nurses that have, you know, kind of come through, and in the Bible, you know, even though it's in there and everything, we read it, but people don't have to be Christian for God to use them. Mm-hmm. And this situation has really brought that, you know, to life for me, that, you know, God can use anybody. He's put, you know, all sorts of people in our path that I'm certain are not Christian. Mm-hmm. You know, and even one guy who used to work for me, he sent me an email and he said, I'm not a Christian, but I've been amazed at watching you.
Wow.
So, and that's another thing that has constantly been, you know, in my mind, that people are watching, you know, because a lot, if you walk into my office at work, I got Bible scriptures, you know, tacked up on it, so it's pretty obvious that I read the Bible and believe in Jesus and everything, and people watch, and they want to see how you know, when a real situation like this comes up, you know, are you going to abandon your faith or not? And, so that's one thing, and another is actually been studying Dr. Jeremiah's new book. It's in the dresser, but it's called 31 Days to Happiness, Finding Heaven on Earth. And it's a study of Ecclesiastes. And I just kind of, a lot of times feel like, you know, getting up and going to work, that I'm wasting time. You know, you know, it's really kind of, you know, Psalms, you know, teach us to number our days, and that's very evident, and I just a lot of times feel like I'm just, you know, I'm wasting time. And then I've been reading Ecclesiastes and, you know, studying that book, and that's pretty much the point of Ecclesiastes. If God's not in it, it's a waste of time. And so, you know, it's really brought that more that, you know, God's in this. You know, again, I tell him every now and then, it's like, God, I'm not real thrilled with your plan right here, but, you know, we'll go with it and see where we end up. And that's been another thing, is really learning that God does control it.
So from here, I know you said you have an appointment, but like, when are your CT scans? Like,
I have to do repeat scans every 8 weeks.
oh, okay.
So this next trip is just check the blood, you know, make sure it's nothing else is out of whack. And
You had scans last time, right?
yes, so I won't have scans again until end of May. Which is the other thing, UT Southwest now has their study open, and they're asking in Fayetteville if we'd like to transfer in here. You know, just like, you know, I don't know if I shared it with you all or a cancer encouragement group, when the doctors were wanting me to have the fluid drained, I wasn't comfortable with that. It's really weird, or I shouldn't say weird, but it's through the whole process, it's like I've felt very comfortable with all the treatments and stuff that the doctors have suggested. Until now, is for some, you know, when they talk about, you know, wanting to drain my lung, I'm not comfortable with that, you know, for some reason. And but you know, the doctors down here were really recommending that. The doctor in Fayetteville is kind of, you know, let's not worry about it right now. But anyway, they were wanting to know if I want to transfer down to UT Southwest, and we had, you know, a lot of mixed emotions about that because of, you know, continuity of care, how many, you know, I don't want anything to get lost in the shuffle now that we know the medicine's working. It's not a bad drive to Fayetteville. This guy's, you know, gets us away from Dallas. It's more relaxing, I guess. It's a different pace of life and stuff up there. And the clinic is, I mean, I hit the clinic and in 2 hours I'm out instead of a day. So.
I was gonna say, you could probably include the drive and be out.
Yeah,
quicker
that's
than-
what I'm saying. And it's kind of, you know, I'm going to be waiting somewhere. Might as well be in the car. So, you know, we don't know what we'll do with that, but I'm kind of leaning to continue going to Fayetteville. Plus all they're not as expensive. I don't know what it is, but
Wow.
a CT scan operating in Fayetteville is cheaper than one operating in Dallas. I don't know why.
Yeah. Hospital overhead.
Yep.
A more personal question. How has this affected you and Delane?
We're closer now than we've ever been.
Yeah.
Don't take this the wrong way, Mom, okay? Chairs on But when Delaney and I had only been married a year when we moved to Midland.
Okay.
And all of our family is in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So we learned to survive on our own. And, because there was no going home to mom and dad or any of that, so, and even, through this, we've learned to survive. It's been, we've actually, I think, when you spend as much time together as we have in the last 3 years in cars, I think we've actually, she can probably answer as much as I can, but I think we're definitely getting closer.
Well, that's a blessing in
Yeah.
itself, isn't it?
Yep.
That's great.
I mean, God's blessed us in a lot of different ways with people and friends. In fact, we were adopted when we were in Houston for a long stretch of time. A friend of Chad's, he raced bicycles at A&M, also is a member of First Baptist Church there in Houston. Their Sunday school adopted us, or their Bible study class adopted us, and they were bringing us food. And his mother decided to get in on the act. She started bringing us food. So,
And she was 45 minutes
yeah,
away.
she lives in Spring. She just happened to drive 45 minutes in to bring us food.
Oh, my.
They made sure we were taken care of. And
Wow.
this young couple, one morning they had a healing service at First Baptist Church there in Houston, and the minister, we watched the service on the internet after they put it up there. In the service, the minister says, if you know somebody in need of healing and want to stand in for them, you can do that. And they stood in for us.
Wow.
Wow,
That's
that's
service.
great.
And I'll never forget, there's a Indian nurse down here when I was in the hospital with neutropenic fever down here at Plano. And she came in one morning and I had my Bible. I was reading my Bible and she said, "Oh, you're reading